The great chamber of the Galactic Conclave was a circle of noise and light. Giant windows showed a swirl of purple and blue gas from the nearby nebula. Beings from 100 different stars stood or sat or floated at their assigned places. Their voices mixed into a constant hum of different languages, all translated by small devices into the common tongue. At the very back of the chamber, away from the central platform, sat the human delegation. There were 4 of them. Their table was simple, their postures calm. They did not speak to their neighbors. They did not gesture or call out. They simply watched. The leader was a man named Jin. He had dark hair with a little gray at the temples. His hands were folded on the table in front of him. His face showed no emotion. He listened to the arguments happening in the center of the room, his eyes moving from one speaker to the next. Next to him sat Hana. She was younger, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her fingers occasionally tapped on a small data slate, making notes. She was a scientist, an expert on alien life, and her job was to understand the details everyone else missed. The current speaker was Ambassador Kalar of the Thesian hegemony. He was tall and thin with long limbs and a sharp face that reminded humans of a bird. His feathers, a glossy blue-black, ruffled slightly when he was excited. Right now, he was very excited. "The world you call Vega 3, Kalar said, his translated voice booming through the chamber, has been in the path of Thesian expansion for generations. Our charts, approved by this very conclave, mark it as a zone of our primary interest. Its resources are vital for the continued growth and security of our people." Kalar gestured with a long 3-fingered hand toward a hologram of the planet, a lush, green and blue world. To see it now being considered for open bidding is an insult. Our claim is the oldest. Our need is the greatest. A delegate from a reptilian species hissed softly. "Your charts are centuries old, Ambassador. Your need does not grant you ownership. The mineral rights should go to the highest bidder." "That is the fair way." Kalar's feathers puffed up. "Fair? You speak of fair? Thesian ships have patrolled the space around Vega 3 for decades. We have invested time and energy. We have the strength to secure our claim." His eyes, dark and shiny, scanned the room. They passed over the bickering reptile folk, the silent insectoid delegates, the massive, slow-moving stone-like beings from Gliza. Then his gaze landed on the quiet table at the back. A look of pure contempt crossed his features. "And what of the newcomers?" Kalar asked, his voice dripping with mockery. He pointed a long finger directly at Jin. "The humans. They have a ship in the area, do they not? A little freighter, I hear. What claim do they whisper about in the shadows?" All the eyes in the chamber turned to look at the human delegation. Jin did not move. He did not flinch or look away. He simply met Kalar's gaze with the same calm, neutral expression. Hana's fingers stopped tapping. She kept her eyes on her data slate, but her jaw tightened just a little. She did not like being the center of attention, especially not like this. "They are so quiet," Kalar continued, laughing. The sound was harsh and choppy. "They sit in the back and they watch. They take their little notes. They think this makes them look wise. It does not. It makes them look small. It makes them look weak." Some of the other delegates chuckled. The Thesians were a powerful faction. It was easy to laugh along with them. "A young, noisy species," Kalar went on, now addressing the whole conclave again. "They spread to many stars quickly, yes. But they have no weight, no history, no real power. They know that here, among the true powers of the galaxy, they have no real voice, so they stay silent. They know their places in the back, listening to their betters." The laughter grew a little louder. Hana felt a hot flush of anger creep up her neck. She wanted to stand up and shout. She wanted to list every human discovery, every innovation, every act of diplomacy. But she stayed silent. She looked at Jin. Jin's face had not changed. He gave a very small, almost invisible nod to Hana, a signal to be calm. Then he did something astonishing. He looked directly at the mocking Ambassador Kalar and offered a small, polite smile. It was not a smile of friendship or agreement. It was a simple, quiet acknowledgement. He had heard the words, and they had not touched him. This seemed to anger Kalar even more. The human silence was a wall that his words could not break. He scoffed and turned back to the reptilian delegate. "Let us return to the discussion between real powers." The focus of the room shifted away from the humans. The noise level rose again as the debate over Vega 3 continued. Hana let out a slow, quiet breath. She leaned slightly toward Jin. Her voice was a whisper. He has no idea. He talks about our little freighter. Jin's eyes were still on the main debate, but he was listening to her. They measure strength in a different way, Hana, he said, his voice just as quiet as hers. They see a big ship, a loud voice, a strong claim. They think that is power. It's arrogant, Hana whispered back, her anger still simmering. It is their way, Jin replied, but our way is different. They measure strength by the noise you make. We measure it by the preparation you do before you are forced to make a sound. As he said this, a tiny, almost silent chime was heard only by Jin and Hana. A message appeared on the surface of Jin's data slate, visible only to him. It was from Chul, the head of their security team, who was not in the chamber, but was watching everything from their ship. The message was short and simple. The package is secure. All elements in position, awaiting your signal. Jin's eyes flicked down to read the words. His expression did not change. He did not type a reply. He simply tapped one finger on the slate twice, a prearranged signal meaning acknowledged. He looked back at Hana. Patience, he said softly. The galaxy is a mirror. Soon it will show Kalar his own reflection, and he will not like what he sees. Hana nodded, finally understanding a little. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was fullness. It was the quiet of a trap before it springs. It was the stillness of a deep ocean before the storm. They weren't just sitting in the back because they were weak. They were sitting in the back because it gave them the best view of the entire room. They could see everyone, but few bothered to really look back at them. She thought about Chul and the others on their ship, the Munsu. To the Thesians and everyone else, it was just an old, slow freighter. A joke, but Hana knew what was inside. She knew the team that was with Chul. They were not soldiers who shouted. They were specialists who moved in utter silence. They were the thing that lurked in the quiet places, the reason the humans could afford to be so calm. The meeting dragged on. Kalar continued to boast and argue. Other delegates made their cases. The humans in the back continued their silence. But now for Hana, the silence felt different. It was no longer a burden. It was a shield. It was a weapon. It was the deep breath before the plunge. She looked at the proud, posturing Ambassador Kalar, so sure of his own power, so blind to what was happening right behind the scenes. He was looking at the surface of the water, laughing at its calmness. He had no idea what was swimming in the depths below. A small, cold smile touched Hana's lips. She picked up her data slate and went back to her notes. Let them mock. Soon enough, they would all see. Soon enough, the silent humans in the back would have everyone's complete and total attention. The Munsu hung in the empty space, far from the busy lanes of the Galactic Conclave station. To any ship that scanned it, the Munsu was nothing special. It was a boxy, old-looking freighter. Its hull was scuffed and plain. It looked slow. It looked harmless. It was the kind of ship that everyone ignored. Inside, the ship was very different. The lights were soft and white. The air was clean and still. The floors were smooth gray metal and the walls were covered with screens and panels that glowed with quiet light. This was not a noisy, messy freighter. It was a place of quiet work. A young woman named Sue sat in the pilot's chair. Her hands moved over the controls without sound. She was checking the ship's systems one by one. The screen in front of her showed lines of data, all green and good. Engine diagnostics are complete, she said, her voice quiet in the calm room. The primary drive is ready. The secondary systems are all online. A man's voice answered her from a speaker on the wall. It was Chul. He was the head of security for the human delegation. He was not on the station with Jin and Hana. He was here on the Munsu in a different room. Good, Chul's voice said. Keep us in a quiet orbit. No active scans. I want us to look like a rock, Sue nodded. We look like a rock, Chul. A very boring, very silent rock. Chul was in a small room deep inside the ship. This room was the command center. Screens showed different views. One screen showed the live feed from the conclave chamber. Chul watched as Ambassador Kalar waved his long arms and talked loudly. He saw the humans sitting quietly in the back. He saw Jin's calm face. Another screen showed a map of the space around the conclave station. Little dots of light showed other ships. A big, sleek Thesian cruiser was parked proudly near the station. It was Kalar's ship. It shone in the sunlight. It looked powerful and fast. The Munsu was just a small gray dot on the edge of the map. No one was looking at it. Chul was a solid man with a calm face. He had been in many difficult situations. He knew that being loud and flashy often meant you had something to prove. Being quiet often meant you were sure of your own strength. He picked up a small communication device. It did not use radio waves that other ships could hear. It used a tight laser-focused beam impossible to intercept. "Jin," Chul said softly into the device, "we are watching. The situation here is stable. How is the mood there?" Back in the conclave chamber, Jin heard Chul's voice through a tiny device in his ear. He did not move or react. He simply tapped his finger twice on his data slate, a signal that meant he understood. A moment later, Jin's own quiet voice came back through the device. "The mood is predictable. Kalar is boasting. Others are nervous. They still see only the surface." Chul smiled a little. "They always do." He switched to a different channel. This one was for the special team on board the Munsu. They were not like normal soldiers. They did not wear heavy armor. They did not carry big, noisy guns. In a large, dimly lit room near the back of the ship, 6 people were checking their equipment. They wore suits made of a soft black material that did not reflect light. Their helmets were simple and dark. There were no markings on their suits, no names, no flags. They moved without sound. Their boots made no noise on the floor. When they spoke to each other, it was not with their voices. It was through a silent link that connected their minds inside the helmets. Their words were just thoughts sent from one person to another. System check. Stealth suit integrity is green. This was the team leader. Her name was Miae, but no one used names here. They were a single unit weapons check. Non-lethal dischargers are charged. Sonic projectors are ready. This came from a tall man who was inspecting a device that looked like a short, thick tube. Grapple lines and zero-G thrusters are functional. Another member reported testing a small pack on her back. They were the lurking unit. Their job was not to fight in a big, loud battle. Their job was to move like shadows, to get in and out of places without anyone knowing they were ever there. They were the sharp, quiet tool that the humans kept hidden. Chul's voice came into their mind link. It was clear and calm. "Team, stand by. The diplomats are doing their work. They are making the Thesians look proud and foolish. This may make the Thesians do something stupid, or it may attract other flies to the honey. Be ready to move if I give the signal." Miae sent a single thought back. "Understood. We are ready." On the bridge, Sue looked at her screens. A small alert flashed. "Chul," she said, "I am picking up a faint energy signature. Very far away. It is near the edge of the Vega 3 system." Chul walked onto the bridge. "Show me," Sue pointed to her screen. A tiny, faint blip of light appeared and then disappeared. "It is trying to hide. It is a very good cloaking system, but not perfect." Chul looked at the blip. He knew what it was. It was a Tyrellian marauder ship. The Tyrellians were pirates. They were ruthless and clever. They liked to ambush ships when they were vulnerable. "They are watching too," Chul said. "They see the big shiny Thesian ship. They are waiting for a chance, and do we tell the conclave?" Sue asked. "Not yet," Chul said. "The Thesians would not believe us. They would say we are making stories to make ourselves look important. No, we will wait. We will be ready." He looked at the view of space on the main screen. The conclave station was a bright jewel. The Thesian cruiser was a proud jewel next to it. And the Munsu was the silent gray rock in the distance. But Chul knew the truth about the rock. Under its plain surface, it had a heart of powerful engines. It had hidden weapons that could cut a ship in half. It had a team of ghosts who could walk through walls. He thought about Jin and Hana sitting silently while Kalar mocked them. He thought about the Tyrellian ship, hiding in the dark, thinking it was the hunter. He thought about his own team waiting in their dark room. Everyone was playing a game. The Thesians thought it was a game of shouting and showing off. The Tyrellians thought it was a game of hide and seek. The humans were playing a different game. It was a game of patience. It was a game of silence. And in this game, the quiet ones were always the most dangerous. "Keep watching the Tyrellians, Sue," Chul said. "Tell me the moment they move." Sue nodded. "I am watching them." Chul left the bridge and went back to his command room. He sat down and looked at the screen showing the conclave. Kalar was still talking. He looked so sure of himself. Chul picked up his communication device again. His voice was very quiet. "The trap is set, Jin," he said. "The players are all in place. Now we just wait for someone to be arrogant enough to spring it. Ambassador Kalar was growing tired. The arguments of the other delegates were like little insects buzzing in his ears. They had no weight. They had no vision. They did not understand that power was not something you debated. It was something you demonstrated. His dark, shiny eyes swept across the chamber and once again landed on the human delegation in the back. Their continued silence was a thorn in his side. Their calm faces were an insult. He needed to break their quiet. He needed to show everyone, especially the humans, what real power looked like. He raised a long, three-fingered hand and the chamber grew quiet. All eyes turned to him. "Enough of this talking," Kalar announced, his voice booming with confidence. "Words are for merchants and lawyers. Thesians are builders and protectors. We do not just talk about our claims. We secure them." He gestured to one of his aides. A large holographic screen flickered to life in the center of the chamber. It showed a beautiful, swirling view of a blue and green planet. It was Vega 3. "This live feed comes from our battlecruiser, the Sky Talon, in high orbit around Vega 3, Kalar said. "Watch, delegates. Watch and understand the difference between words and action." On the screen, the sleek, powerful shape of the Thesian ship moved into view. Its weapons glinted in the light of the distant sun. It was a magnificent display of engineering and force. "Observe the northern polar region," Kalar commanded. "A range of barren, useless mountains. They serve no purpose. They block access to rich mineral deposits beneath them." A target appeared on the hologram, circling a large, jagged mountain range. "In a show of our commitment and our capability, the Sky Talon will now clear this obstruction," Kalar said, a proud tone in his voice. "This is the power required to tame a world. This is the strength needed to secure a future." There was a tense silence in the chamber. Then a bright, blinding light erupted from the underside of the Thesian ship. A beam of pure energy shot down towards the planet. It struck the mountain range. The effect was instant and terrifying. The mountains did not just explode. They vaporized. A huge cloud of dust and fire bloomed on the surface, and when it cleared, there was nothing left but a glowing, molten plain. A wave of shocked murmurs went through the conclave. Some delegates looked impressed. Others looked frightened. It was a staggering show of destructive power. Kalar let the silence hang in the air for a moment, letting the image sink in. He felt a thrill of satisfaction. This was real. This was undeniable. Then he turned. He pointed his long finger directly at Jin, who was still sitting calmly at the back. "This," Kalar declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "is the language of power. Can your species even comprehend such a force? Can your little freighter even dream of such a thing?" He smirked, waiting for a reaction. For a flinch, for a sign of fear. Jin slowly placed his hands on the table and stood up. The movement was smooth and quiet. All the noise in the chamber died away. Every being watched the human. Jin's face was still calm, but his eyes were hard. He did not look at Kalar. He looked at the hologram, at the scorched and melted land where the mountains used to be. "We comprehend the force, Ambassador," Jin said. His voice was not loud, but it was clear and sharp like ice. It carried to every corner of the silent room. "We also comprehend its lack of precision." Kalar's smirk faded. "What are you talking about?" "They were barren rocks." Hana stood up beside Jin. She held her data slate. Her voice was cool and factual, the voice of a scientist stating an unfortunate truth. "Those barren rocks, Ambassador, were not barren," she said. "The intense pressure and unique mineral composition of those mountains created a vast network of deep caverns. Inside those caverns, protected from the surface, was a nascent crystalline ecosystem. It was the only one of its kind we have ever discovered." She tapped her slate and a new image appeared on the large hologram, next to the view of the destruction. It was a breathtaking sight. It showed a cavern glowing with soft internal light. Delicate crystal structures grew from the walls and floor, pulsing with a gentle rainbow colors. They looked like fragile glass flowers. "Our long-range passive scans identified it months ago," Hana continued. "We were monitoring its growth. It was a truly alien life form, a new branch of biology. Your show of force did not clear an obstruction, Ambassador. It committed an act of galactic vandalism. You have destroyed a unique and priceless treasure to make a political point." The mood in the chamber shifted instantly. The shock at the Thesians' power turned into a wave of disapproval and disgust. Murmurs of ecocide and barbaric could be heard. Kalar was stunned. His feathers flattened against his body. This was not the reaction he had planned. This is a lie. You have no proof. Your scans are a fantasy. How do you think we knew about the crystals, Ambassador? Jin asked, his quiet voice somehow louder than Kalar's shouting. We have had no ships in the system. You would have detected them. We have not set foot on the planet. You have seen no probes. He paused, letting the delegates think about that. We use passive, deep-penetrating sensor buoys. They do not transmit. They do not broadcast. They only listen and record. They are virtually undetectable. They have been gathering data from the Vega 3 system for over a year. We knew about the ecosystem. We also knew about the Tyrellian raider ship that has been hiding in the asteroid belt on the far side of the system for the last 3 weeks. Waiting for a moment just like this, a new wave of gasps went through the chamber. Thesian military secrets and a hidden pirate threat, all revealed by the silent humans in the back. Kalar looked from Jin's calm face to Hana's factual one, to the disapproving faces of the other delegates. His grand display had backfired completely. He had not shown strength. He had shown ignorance and brutality, and the humans, the quiet humans he had mocked, had known everything all along. Their silence had not been emptiness. It had been full of knowledge. It had been the silence of a judge, listening to a guilty man condemn himself with his own words. Jin sat down again, his message delivered. The damage was done. The Thesians were not powerful. They were careless. The humans were not weak. They were terrifyingly well informed. Kalar stood alone in the center of the room, his grand moment in ruins. The hologram still showed the two images side by side, the beautiful lost crystal caverns and the ugly molten scar he had created. He had wanted to prove his strength. Instead, he had proven the value of the human silence. A deep, cold silence had fallen over the conclave chamber. The image of the glowing crystal caverns and the scorched earth where they once lived was burned into every delegate's mind. Ambassador Kalar stood frozen, his grand speech forgotten, his pride shattered. The silence was broken by a sharp, urgent beeping from the Thesian communication console. Kalar's aide, his feathers ruffled in panic, whispered into his ear. Kalar's head snapped up, his eyes wide with a new, different kind of shock. No, he whispered. Then louder, show the feed, now! The main hologram flickered and changed. It now showed the live view from the bridge of the Thesian battlecruiser, the Sky Talon. The planet Vega 3 hung below them, beautiful and peaceful. But on the edge of the screen, a new ship icon blinked ominously. What is that? A delegate shouted. The icon resolved into a ship. It was the Munsu, the human freighter. It had moved from the edge of the sensor range and was now drifting calmly, much closer to the Thesian ship. A wave of confused laughter went through the chamber. The tension broke. The human freighter! Kalar cried, a hysterical edge to his voice. He pointed a trembling finger at Jin. You send this old crate? To do what? To scold me? To take pictures of my crime? He laughed, a raw, ugly sound. You are even more foolish than I thought. My ship will swat yours from the sky like an insect. Jin did not answer. He simply looked at the hologram, his expression unreadable. Then a new alarm blared from the Thesian ship's feed. A much larger, much more dangerous contact suddenly appeared on the sensors. It emerged from the shadow of a nearby gas giant, its cloaking field dropping. It was a Tyrellian marauder vessel, a ship known across the galaxy for its brutality. It was large, covered in jagged spikes and weapon pods, and it was moving fast, straight for the Sky Talon. The Thesian ship was in a terrible position. It had just fired its main weapon. Its power levels were low. Its shields were not at full strength. It was vulnerable. Panic erupted in the conclave. Delegates shouted. The Tyrellians were pirates, slavers, and killers. They showed no mercy. On the feed, the Thesian captain's voice was tight with fear. Evasive maneuvers! Raise shields! All power to engines! But it was too late. The Tyrellian ship was already in attack range. Its weapons glowed with a deadly red light. It was a predator, and it had caught its prey off guard. Kalar was pale. He looked from the hologram to the other delegates, his eyes pleading for help that would not come. No one had a ship close enough to intervene. They were all going to watch the Sky Talon be destroyed or captured. In the back of the chamber, Jin spoke a single, calm word into the tiny device in his ear, Chul. On the live feed, everything changed. The old, boxy freighter, the Munsu, suddenly came to life. But not like a normal ship. There was no roar of engines. No loud announcement, it was a silent transformation. Sections of its plain, scuffed hull slid open with a smooth, quiet motion. Underneath, there was no rusty metal. There was a dark, advanced composite material. Panels on its sides retracted, revealing the cold, hard barrels of railguns and the focused dishes of energy projectors. Its engine ports, which had seemed small and weak, now glowed with a fierce blue-white light that spoke of immense power. In seconds, the harmless-looking freighter was gone. In its place was a sleek, deadly, and heavily armed warship. It was a Q-ship, a wolf in sheep's clothing. A collective gasp of utter shock filled the conclave chamber. The delegates stared, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Munsu moved. It did not lumber. It pivoted with a speed that seemed impossible for its size. It placed itself perfectly between the charging Tyrellian ship and the struggling Thesian cruiser. On the bridge of the Munsu, Sue's hands danced over the controls. Her face was focused but calm. "We are in position. Their targeting scanners are trying to lock onto the Thesian ship. They are ignoring us," Chul's voice was steady in her ear. "Let them ignore us. Activate point defense. Target their forward weapons array. Disable, do not destroy." "Activating," Sue said. On the hologram, the delegates saw small, precise flashes of light erupt from the human ship. They were not the huge, dramatic blasts of the Thesian cannon. They were quick, accurate beams of energy. They struck the Tyrellian ship's forward weapon pods. The red glow of their charging weapons flickered and died. The Tyrellian ship shuddered. The Tyrellians, realizing their mistake, tried to turn their weapons on the Munsu. But it was too late. The human ship was already moving again, its movements economical and perfect. It was like watching a master swordsman against a clumsy brawler. At the same time, on the feed, they saw new, smaller shapes emerge from the Munsu. They were not fighter craft. They were individual figures clad in form-fitting black suits. They rode on small, silent platforms that glowed with a soft blue light. They moved like ghosts through the vacuum, heading straight for the Tyrellian ship. The lurking unit was deploying. Inside the Tyrellian marauder vessel, the mood shifted from attack to confusion, and then to alarm. Their initial scan had shown only a weak freighter and a vulnerable warship. Now the freighter was a battleship, and their own weapons were offline. Alarms blared on the Tyrellian bridge. "What is that ship? Where did it come from?" The captain roared. "They are launching boarding craft." A crewman yelled. "No," another said, his voice confused. "They are too small. They are just people." Then the lights on the bridge flickered. A strange low hum filled the ship, a sound that was felt more than heard. It was a neural disruption field. All over the ship, Tyrellian pirates clutched their heads. Their vision blurred. Their muscles went weak. They stumbled and fell. On the external feed, the conclave watched as the black-suited figures reached the Tyrellian ship. They did not blast the hull open. They attached small devices to specific points on the outer hull. There was a brief contained flash and they were inside. It was a clean surgical breach. The live feed from the Thesian ship could not show what happened inside the Tyrellian vessel. But the delegates could imagine. They saw the Tyrellian ship's engines go dark. Its weapon systems shut down completely. It became a dead, silent hulk in space, captured in a matter of minutes. The entire fight, from the Munsu's transformation to the capture of the Marauder, had taken less than 5 minutes. The conclave chamber was utterly, profoundly silent. The only sound was the quiet hum of the hologram. All eyes, wide with awe and fear, slowly turned from the screen. They looked to the back of the room. They looked at the silent humans. The silence in the conclave chamber was heavy and deep. It was the silence after a great storm. The hologram still showed the view of space. The Thesian ship, the Sky Talon, hung motionless, its systems slowly recovering. Next to it was the dark, dead shape of the Tyrellian Marauder. And between them, small and steady, was the human ship, the Munsu. It no longer looked like an old freighter. It looked like what it was, a quiet, deadly guardian. Every delegate in the room was staring at the humans. Their eyes were no longer filled with mockery or pity. Now they were filled with a new emotion, a deep, cold fear. They had seen a power they did not understand. A power that hid in plain sight. Ambassador Kalar was still standing in the center of the room. He looked small now. His proud feathers were flat against his body. He looked from the hologram to Jin and then back again. He could not find any words. Jin slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. The sound of the chair moving was loud in the quiet room. He did not walk to the center. He did not need to. Everyone was listening. He looked at Kalar, but he spoke to the entire conclave. "You mocked our silence," Jin said. His voice was still quiet, but now every word felt like a weight dropping onto a scale. "You thought it was weakness. You were wrong." He paused, letting them feel the truth of his words. It was the silence of the hunter, not the prey. We do not believe in shouting our strength to the stars. We believe in demonstrating it only when it is necessary. When it is necessary to protect our people, to protect our interests, and when possible, to protect the peace of the galaxy from threats that others cannot or will not face. He gestured toward the hologram. The Tyrellian Marauder, a threat your own military has failed to stop, has been neutralized. Its crew is alive but disabled. They are prisoners. We will be taking custody of their ship and the crew. They will face justice. He then turned his gaze fully on Kalar. The Thesian ambassador seemed to shrink under the calm, hard stare. As for Vega III, Jin continued, your claim is now based on an act of destruction. Our claim is based on knowledge and preservation. We do not wish to simply take the planet. That is not our way. Instead, we propose a joint scientific survey. Our data on the planet's ecosystems, what remains of them, will be given to the conclave. We will lead the effort to study and protect what is left. Thesian scientists are welcome to join us. You can help us heal the damage you have done. It was not a demand. It was not a threat. It was an offer. But it was an offer made from a position of absolute power. It was mercy, and everyone in the room knew it. Kalar opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He simply nodded, a short, jerky motion. He had been defeated, not just in argument, but in spirit. He had been shown that his entire understanding of the universe was wrong. Jin gave a small final nod to the room. Then he sat down. The human delegation was silent once more, but the silence was different now. It was no longer the silence of being ignored. It was the silence of respect. It was the silence given to a power that you do not fully understand, but that you know you must not anger. One by one, the other delegates turned away. They began to talk among themselves in low, serious whispers. They were already thinking about how this changed everything, how they would have to deal with humanity from now on. On the bridge of the Munsu, Chul watched the conclave feed on his screen. He saw Jin sit down. He saw the fear and respect on the faces of the other delegates. He allowed himself a small, tight smile. "It is done," he said into his calm. In the dim room, the lurking unit heard his voice in their minds. They were back on the Munsu, their black suits being cleaned and stored. Their work was finished. They had boarded the Tyrellian ship, disabled the crew without killing a single one, and secured the vessel. It had been quiet, efficient, and total. Mission accomplished, Mie thought back. Sue, still in her pilot's chair, let out a long breath. "So what happens now?" "Now," Chul said, walking onto the bridge, "they will remember. They will remember that the quiet ones in the back are not weak. They are the ones who are watching. They are the ones who are prepared. They are the ones with the real power." He looked out the main viewport at the stars. They thought they saw all of us. They saw the quiet diplomats. They did not see what was lurking behind them. They will not make that mistake again. Back in the conclave chamber, the meeting was slowly ending. Delegates were leaving their tables, casting nervous glances at the human delegation as they passed. Jin and Hana gathered their data slates. They did not speak. They did not smile. They simply stood and walked toward the exit, just as they had come in, quietly and together. As they walked through the large doors, a delegate from a small, timid species stepped back to give them a wide path. His eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and gratitude. Hana saw the look and understood. They were not just humans anymore. They were the silent guardians. They were the lurking threat. They were the ones who had shown the galaxy that true strength does not need to roar. It only needs to be ready. And as they walked down the corridor, leaving the noise of the conclave behind them, the silence that followed them was no longer empty. It was full of meaning. It was the sound of a galaxy learning a new and very important lesson.